Hi, my name is Josh. I'm from Battleground, Washington, and just wanted to share the story of how I used to be a drug addict and a drug dealer and how God set me free from that and what my life is like now. It's kind of an interesting story because I got drunk the first time when I was like 14, smoked pot and got stoned that year or two, and I started feeling like, I don't know, more like normal in my own skin. I was a super shy kid, and I don't know, I just felt like it helped me like open up a little bit more and fit in and stuff like that. And I started kind of using more when I was like 15, 16. And by the time I was 16, I was pretty much like a full-blown stoner kid. And I started selling pot to like support my habit. And I don't know, I just have always been like entrepreneurial. So I think that like translated into my drug use. Like I used to buy and sell paintball guns when I was like 13, 14 and resell it on eBay. And so when I learned about drugs, I just kind of, I don't know, did the same thing. It's kind of weird, but I just wanted to support my addiction and have some money to go to Burgerville too. And that was just mainly what I did. And like in high school, high school is weird. Like I remember I moved to like the Battleground area when I was like 14, didn't know anybody. It was right before my sophomore year. And I remember like my sophomore year, I didn't know anybody. I was like this nerdy kid. I wore these hockey jerseys that were like way too big for me that like went down to my knees, and this stupid, like this really nerdy kid. But then when I started using and selling pot, it like made me feel like I was somebody, like I started getting invited to the parties and people wanted, to hang out with me, and I always vowed I would never do like hard drugs. I was like, I argued. I'm like, no, it doesn't lead to harder things, but it did, for me, like, and I tried cocaine after I needed a new high, I guess. My friend introduced it to me, and when I was like 18, and I don't know, from the time I first tried it, it was a different kind of high, and I just fell in love like immediately. And pot just made me like most people just lay lazy and relaxed, and I just listened to music for hours and eat a bunch of food and play video games and not do anything. And cocaine was the opposite. It gave me this like powerful feeling and like had all this energy, and I was more like bold, and because even when I was high, I was still kind of like awkward and shy and timid, and cocaine made me feel like I'm this like super person. And I turned kind of mean too. I would just like yell at people sometimes and just say what I thought, and kind of turn into like a jerk sometimes. So I was working full time for my dad. I would get off work around like 5 p.m. and a lot of times I'd have to go get more drugs. They call it re-upping. I have to go re-up my supply. So I'd get off work, drive about an hour out of town, meet my drug dealer, go buy a bunch of cocaine, and come back into Battleground. So by that time it's like 7:30, 8 o'clock. And I'd already used a little bit at my drug dealer's house, so I'd be a little bit high. Then I'd get into my apartment. I'd have 2 or 3 friends over that wanted to use with me and that were buying drugs. And I'd crack open my 5th of rum, and we would just start using cocaine. We'd just make out lines on the mirror and start getting high. And cocaine only lasts about 25, 30 minutes. So every half hour, we're like doing another line. And sometimes like I would use so much, I would start bleeding in my one nostril and then the other nostril. So sometimes it's like I have 2 things of toilet paper stuck in there, so I couldn't use it anymore. But at that time I would switch to smoking it. So it's called freebasing, and then we would just smoke it off of tinfoil. And then we do that. Then we go outside, smoke some cigarettes, come back in, I'd be drinking my rum, and then we're just drinking and using like all night. And so yeah, and I would try to stop using by like 1 or 2 in the morning so I could wake up to go to work at 7 or 8, but I couldn't quit. And 2 a.m. would turn to 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. Then all of a sudden it's daylight, and I would be all mad at myself because I didn't stop using. And then I'd go yet another night with 0 hours of sleep. And so I'd take a shower, and then I would get dressed, put my nice work clothes on, and go to work. I would crash at the office because when you stop doing drugs after you've been doing them for all night, you have these horrible crashes, and it just feels bad physically, emotionally, everything. And I'd vow I'm gonna stop this. This is horrible. This is stupid. But then I'd get off work and just repeat the cycle again and again and again. So that was my life. The first time I decided to get help, it was after I had an intervention done on me. by my friends who were meth users themselves, but they were worried about me. So that tells you like kind of how bad it got. But they did an intervention, and my parents were there, and this guy from AA, and I agreed to go to the hospital with them that night because I had been up on a 7-day bender, and I was not doing good physically, and so I ended up in the hospital, and they hooked me up to all these IVs and stuff like that. They're monitoring me, and during that time, someone from the hospital, like a caseworker, I don't know what her name is, but someone came and like gave us some information about treatment centers and addiction and things like that, and they asked if I was interested, and I said yes, I was. But what motivated me to say yes is I just thought that was a way to not go to jail. I went to a place called Hazelden Springbrook, 28-day inpatient treatment center. First time I was sober for that long time in a long time, so that was kind of like a trip in itself, just to be not on something for that long. I was like, wow, this is crazy, being like normals. And they started, they talk a lot about spirituality. It's 12-step based. They talk about God, and yeah, it was interesting. I was in there with, a bunch of professionals. Like I was in there with a neurosurgeon. I was in there with a ex-special forces guy. I was in there with an addiction psychologist, believe it or not, who had his own addiction that he couldn't overcome. So I was in there with all these these guys that were pretty successful on the outside, but they were just struggling with the same thing I was on the inside. So finished my 28 days. They wanted me to stay to go to like I don't know what you call it, kind of like a halfway house, like you go live on campus, you have a little bit more freedom, and you continue your treatment. And I didn't want to do that. I thought I just had to get back to my great, amazing life in Battleground. I couldn't be away any longer. I don't know why. I just wanted to get back to life. And so I got out of treatment center and started going to AA meetings every night of the week, and started practicing like 12 steps pretty intensely, and started working with the sponsor, and just trying to stay sober. And I thought, hey, if I can go to these 12-step meetings and I can stay clean, great. If I have to do that every night, that's fine. It's better than the life I was living. But I was still struggled with a lot of like mental disorders. I was seeing a psychiatrist at the time too, and they diagnosed me as like severe depression, ADHD, and bipolar. So I had a lot of stuff going on like in my mind that was not healthy. I had regular like suicidal thoughts. I'd just be driving down the road, and I'd always get these thoughts of just like swerve into oncoming traffic, like just kill yourself. And like I'd always have these weird suicidal thoughts, and like it was just and some days I would just sleep as long as I could to 1, 2, 3 p.m. I just didn't want to wait. I just had these really bad bouts of depression, but I just kept going to AA. I just kept trying to work the program, and I did that until I relapsed 6 months later after I got out of rehab. First time I relapsed, it was some old friends wanted to see me, and I was like, sure, I'll go over there. And I didn't go over there with the intention of using or drinking. And the next thing, I'm sitting outside on the porch or smoking cigarettes and stuff. I'm just talking like that. And then I go inside, there's a bottle of alcohol in the middle of the table. And I just look at that bottle, and I'm like, I'm going to drink tonight. I'm going to get drunk. And, and I don't know why. I just 5 minutes earlier was talking about how glad I was clean and stuff to these friends, But anyway, I took that drink and ended up drinking a lot more, got really drunk. Someone had marijuana and I got stoned. I was looking for cocaine. Nobody had it there at that party. And I ended up passed out outside the bathroom on the floor. And that was that first time I relapsed. I had no intention of doing it, and just went and hung out with some old friends that I probably shouldn't have hung out with, And the second time I relapsed, it had been 9 months since I originally went to rehabs, 3 months after my last relapse on alcohol and marijuana. And so what happened that time was I was still seeing the psychiatrist. They're trying to get my meds right. They're playing around with different things. And they prescribed a drug called Adderall to me to help with my ADHD and stuff. And I remember the psychiatrist looked at me and he's like, if this makes you feel like speedy, don't take it. And I remember having a red flag, like a check, like, ooh, I should tell him, like, this is not good for me with my past with, cocaine and addiction. But I didn't. I just didn't say anything, and I just took it, and I thought I could handle it. And I took it, and I felt speedy. And then I took another one, not as prescribed. I was like, ooh, I like that feeling. I took another one, and then within an hour or two, I had cocaine in my hands. I made some phone calls. I got some coke, found some friends, and started using. And I was right back to where I was 9 months ago, as far as like the level of paranoia and, you know, how much I was using and everything. And yeah, it's pretty bad. And I remember that night thinking that I was going to die. Like, I just had this pretty strong thought that I'm gonna die. And I kept hearing this, that you're gonna die because you didn't take your second and third chances seriously that God gave you. You know, you had another shot at life. All these people care for you. You went to rehab and all these things, and I just blew it again and again. And I thought, I'll die, and my life will be used as an example of what happens when you don't take those second, third chances seriously. And so I just started using like more intensely, and wanted to just keep using, you know, probably just to kill myself. I don't know. It was a horrible, weird feeling. Place I was at. And the friends I was at, even though they were using, they didn't want me to keep using. They saw how intensely I was using, and no one would take me to go get more drugs. And I wanted to, you know, get more. And eventually the girls that I was with said they were going to Fred Meyer, because by this time it was morning. We were up all night using. They said they're going to Fred Meyer. I said, hey, I want to tag along, and I just want to get something to eat and drink there. But really, I wanted to go to the ATM machine and pull out some cash to get more cocaine. But little did I know, they called my parents, coordinated, and they let them know they were worried about me, and they met my dad at the parking lot, so they pulled in right next to my dad's truck. And I was like, crap, they set me up. And I thought, I could run. I was on Mill Plain, the Fred Meyer Mill Plain. I was like, you know, I got my cell phone and my wallet, and I could just run and keep using. But I was just so tired. I was so tired of everything. I didn't have like any energy. And I just got in the truck with my dad, and it was the worst awkward silence ever, because he just drove home. And I think he said like one thing about, you can't be part of the business anymore or work with me or anymore. And, I'm like, yeah. And it was just, it felt horrible, and he just took me back to their house, and I ended up crashing there, and, passed out and woke up, and yeah. So after I relapsed a second time, went back to my parents' house, I crashed, slept, and then I woke up. And then I remember just going into the bathroom we had a 2-story house in Battleground. I remember going into the bathroom and just got on my knees, and I just said, Jesus, if you're real, save me. Like, I don't know, exactly why I said it or anything. I just, I had all these ideas of God and different spirituality stuff, but I just, like, Jesus was, I don't know, he's called the Savior, like he was the only one I felt like I could reach out to that could save me. Like, and I was like, Jesus, if you're real, save me. Really, that's the extent of my prayer, and I didn't have any like shining light experience or any crazy thing, but I felt like something happened like inside of me at that time, and I never had a craving after that. Like, I feel like I got set free like in that moment. I feel like that's when I was born again. After that, I had a different kind of craving. I started hungering for the Word of God. I started reading the Bible. Like, things changed. Like, after that, I feel like, he proved that he was real, and he set me free. And I know that because the biggest thing is I had no cravings at all ever since then. That was May 24th, 2004, so whatever that is, a long time ago. I can't do math, 14 years ago or something. That's when things started to really change, in my life in a big way. So the kind of funny, ironic thing is the apartment where I was like at the worst rock bottom of my using was actually the apartment complex that's directly behind the church I go to now, Church on the Rock. And so I think about that sometimes when I hear like Brad preaching and stuff, is like, if you were to like take a section out of like the wall right there behind where the preacher is like talking, like that would look literally like right into my old apartment building, which is kind of crazy. So yeah, it's just weird. I just think about that, like where God brought me from, and think of like, I always think too, like who else is in those apartments today? You just don't know like what people are going through. You just see someone walking up to their apartment. You don't know what they're doing behind there, and if they're going through horrible things, whether it's addiction or depression or, it's just, I don't know, it just reminds me that like, we have a responsibility, to share this message with people. So I just kind of, I don't know, smiles when I pull into the parking lot, because we share the same like parking lot, so it's like pull in, I'm like, oh, I used to drive right and pull into my parking spot there and go up and do massive amounts of cocaine, and now I pull in left and I go to church right here. So it's just kind of a weird thing. So what happened after, I got saved and everything, it was, of course, everything wasn't like fixed in my life overnight. I do feel like I got like set free, like delivered from the chains of addiction, like spiritually. First thing I remember changing is this feeling of hope. I never had hope for the future, as long as I could remember. Like maybe it was the depression that I always had as a kid, or I don't know, but I just never remember before Christ. I don't ever remember thinking about the future positively. The future is always this thing to be dreaded, this doom, and but then after I got saved, I just remember thinking my life could be good. I don't know, it sounds so simple, but that's the first thing I noticed is I actually have hope for tomorrow, and I can be okay in my own skin now. I don't need any outside substance. I don't need anything to make me enjoy life. I really actually enjoy life, and I'm having a good time, just with the Lord and with my family and everything. So I have joy, I have happiness, I have these things that I was going after with the drugs that they never quite fulfilled. There's always this promise of, oh, you're gonna feel like this, and you're always chasing something. You're chasing this high that you once had, and you're just chasing this feeling of happiness, but it's always fleeting and stuff. And so I don't know, I just feel like I have this abiding. It's not like every day is the best day, but it's the worst day that I have today. I mean, it's 100 times better than the best days I had using. I mean, you can't even compare it. I mean, it's just compared to that, I mean, there's no bad days, it was a horrible life back then. And so I'm just thankful, I'm thankful for God's grace, that's what it is. That's why I'm here. So, yeah.